Hi, everybody. I'm Ashley Spires, and I'm here to talk to you guys today about where I get my ideas. So I have a fantastic job. My job is to write stories and draw pictures in picture books and in graphic novels. You might recognize this one here, The Most Magnificent Thing. And I'm going to talk to you guys today about where my ideas come from, because even though I know you guys are all engineers and you're going to be building things, we all have to come up with new ideas all the time, and we have to be creative. And sometimes you can get inspiration from very unlikely places. So I'm going to show you where I get my ideas, and I'm going to show you a little bit of the work and a lot of the mistakes that go into making a book or making anything, really. You might see some friends in the background here and there. You can see my friend Scott here. I have quite a few buddies in the house, and they might go wandering through. So hopefully you'll get to see little cameos throughout the throughout my presentation here. So I'm going to play from the start. I guess I should share my screen first. Let me share my screen. I'm going to show you guys lots of pictures, and we're going to, here we go, get started. So I'm Ashley Spires, and I love to draw pictures. It's my absolute favorite thing in the whole wide world to do. And so I draw lots of self-portraits. This is right here with all my various furry critters. And I work in this room that you see behind me here. Another angle of it is right here. And so this is my studio. And so even before COVID and before the wildness and craziness of the world in the past year, I worked at home. And when you work at home, as a lot of people have discovered this past year, you can get a little bit lonely. So I filled up my house with some friends, one of whom you met a moment ago behind me, but here they all are. I have Fran, and I have Penny, and I have Mina, and I have Scott and Tess. Scott, you met a moment ago. And I have Gordon the dog. I know it seems like a weird thing to be talking to you guys about creating ideas and making things, and I'm showing you pictures of my pets. But the reason I show them to you is because they inspire my stories. So Gordon is actually turned up in my Binky The Space Cat series of graphic novels that I make, and he's Agent Gordon in this world. And even my cat Gracie, who unfortunately I lost to cancer a few years ago, here she is, but she now gets to live forever in my books. And so my pets, watching them do all the things they do every day and all the silly stuff that they do and the way they interact with each other, they inspire me to write a lot of stories. And so maybe for some of you guys who need to come up with ideas for things you're going to be building, maybe your inspiration can come from the pets or animals or family members around you. Now, a lot of people ask, can dogs and cats actually get along? Absolutely. In my house, they are great, great friends. And it's a good thing that Gordon really likes cats, because one of the things that I do as well, because I firmly believe that if you love something, you should run towards it, because you'll never know what it will turn into. And so for me, that's kittens. And I foster orphan kittens for my local shelter. And so by now, in the last 6 years, I should change that number. I think I've had close to 60 kittens now through my house, which is kind of insane, but not all at once. They go through in batches, but they are a huge inspiration for me. And, every now and again, some of them stick around. So Scott, who you met a moment ago, and his sister Tess, they came to me with these little tiny sprouts of creatures many years ago, and it became apparent that there was sort of something going on with them, that they weren't quite as healthy as my normal kittens that I get. And it turns out that they have asthma, which a lot of people have, and I didn't even realize cats could have asthma. And so I kept them because they require a little special care, and they require a puffer every day and just a little bit more medical attention than your average cat. But keeping them ended up being a marvelous thing, because they are a huge inspiration to me, so much so that they have turned into comics. So I started to create the Asthma Cats, just to tell some people what to look for in case your cat has asthma. So here are some of the weird and wonderful little symptoms that they have that I picked up on. And then it turned into just sort of making comics about Scott and Tess and the weird little antics and things that they do. They're brother and sister, so it's really fun to write about the brother and sister relationship, which some of you guys might be familiar with. And it turned out, by just making these for fun, posting it on my social media pages, and they are turning into a book. So now I'm going to be making a book about Scott and Tess, the Asthma Cats. And moreover, when the book is published, money from the book will go towards animal rescue. So again, you just if you are a creative person and you like to make things, just run towards the thing you love and let yourself make stuff, because you'd be surprised what it can lead to. So I've always been the kind of person who loves to draw. This is my early work. Sometimes kids, when they see that I draw books and do all this stuff for a living, it means that maybe I've just always been good at drawing. That's not the case. I have to practice, just like everybody else. Just like anybody who wants to get good at anything, you have to practice. So I thought I'd show you my early work here. This is me in grade 1. So this is what I was drawing then, and you guys are probably familiar with Humpty Dumpty, but maybe something you wouldn't have noticed if I don't point this out is that I make a lot of mistakes. And so even though Humpty hasn't had a fault yet, he is already missing a foot right here. So, you know, he's already having a rough day. That, or maybe I just forgot to draw that foot that day. I don't know. So as I got older, I kept practicing drawing, like I mentioned, and I drew cats. What a surprise. And I always thought my drawings could be better. I always thought my drawings should look as good as the ones that I saw in books and in cartoons on television. And so I kept practicing, but I was always just, I felt like they just weren't as good as the things that I could see on the page. And so I taught myself how to draw by copying other drawings that I thought were really good. So I loved comics as a kid. So I loved Calvin and Hobbes. I copied those drawings because Bill Watterson's amazing. I copied Garfield, I copied Beatrix Potter, and I copied, of course, Disney, because they were, in my opinion, at that, when I was a little kid, the best drawings around. And so by copying other drawings, that's how I learned how to draw different hands, different faces, different facial expressions, all different things like that. Scott's just walking below the screen here, so just in case I picked up the keyboard there. So I wasn't just drawing as a kid, I was also just making things, just probably like you guys. I'm the kind of kid who just loved to make things. And so I made things out of polymer clay, or Fimo or Sculpey as the brand names. And so you can bake it in the oven and cook it, and then it turns hard, so you keep it forever. And so the best way for me to explain to you just how small these are, because I know you probably don't have a lot of Canadian pennies kicking around in Ireland, you can take a look at this little bear right here, and you guys can see that he's got like a little nose and eyes and ears. Scott is being so involved tonight. That little bear right there is actually, if you take your pinky out and take a look at your fingernails, the hard part, cover up about half of your pinky fingernail, that's how big that bear is. Teeny tiny bear. So I like to make things teeny tiny when I was little, obviously. And I thought it was really interesting when I pulled these out, was I discovered this little cat here who I just made for fun when I was a kid. And I'm gonna bomb back a few slides here, but that little cat looks an awful lot like this guy right here, Binky the Space Cat. So even though when I was your guys' age, I was copying drawings and teaching myself how to draw by copying other people's work, I was already developing my own artistic style that stayed with me my whole life. Little Fimo guy turned into this comic. Who knew? I also love making needle felting projects. So I make finger puppets, which is all these guys here. I needle felt them. And I actually was selling them at different stores across Canada for a while, believe it or not. And they were just sort of a fun little side gig that I had going on for a while. And then when it came time for me to come up with an idea for a book, I decided that I was going to take a handful of these finger puppets and make a story about them. So I chose a penguin, a walrus, and a polar bear, and I made a super silly story about a penguin who goes in search of a cupcake because he's sick of eating fish every single day. And I did this because, well, because I'd been looking at these characters for a long time. I knew they had a story in there. But if I hadn't written this, maybe I wouldn't have become an author, because this was the very first book that I ever wrote and illustrated. So because of these little finger puppets, I kind of became an author, which is kind of wild, right? So again, those of you who like to make stuff, you never know where it's going to take you. My favorite thing still, though, is to draw. And my favorite place to draw is my sketchbook. Now, some of you guys probably have sketchbooks. I love sketchbooks because they're my favorite place to draw and play and have fun. Because I'm sure you guys have all felt this way sometimes. When you have a blank piece of paper, like this side, let's say, it can be a bit intimidating, right? It can be really scary and you're not really sure what you want to draw. And you're so worried about making it just right that you don't even want to start. That's why I love sketchbooks. Because in here you can open up and you can try stuff. maybe they'll work. Maybe sometimes they won't. Sometimes I have pages that maybe didn't work out so well, so I didn't even super finish them. But you know what I used to do when I was young was when there was a page I didn't like, I would often rip it out and throw it away because I didn't want to look at that bad drawing anymore, what I decided was a bad drawing. And so what I do now, though, is I keep those pages, because even though I didn't think any of these kitties worked for the project that I was working on, one of these kitties might work on a project I'm going to work on in 3 years. I don't know. There might be little parts of all of these things on the days I didn't like, that there might be something that I do like and something that I can use for my next book. I also get a lot of ideas from just doing doodles and just playing. So I love playing with drawing bad guys, because it's kind of my secret thing that I absolutely adore drawing, because I love, you know, the crazy outfits and bad teeth and stink lines, and pirates are like the worst guys going, and they have great outfits. So I did this little drawing for fun, and then I was back to my sketchbook and I was drawing some things many years ago, and this little pirate popped out of my head. And now this little pirate doesn't really look like a typical bad guy, doesn't he? He looks kind of sweet, and he's got great big glasses, and he's obviously quite small, because look at him as compared to the rats. And he's fighting with a fork instead of a sword. And so this little drawing that I did in my sketchbook turned into this whole story called Small Saul, about this little guy who climbs onto a boat someday. He just wants to sail the high seas and explore the ocean, but he's too short to join the Navy, so he becomes a pirate instead, because pirates will take anybody. And so this whole story came out of doing one doodle in my sketchbook. So again, you guys have to come up with some ideas, I'm sure, pretty soon. Maybe you have ideas already living in your sketchbook that you can pull from. So I'm going to show you a quick video here, because sometimes kids ask me how I do my drawings. I do my drawings all different ways, but with things like Small Saul and the Binky pictures that I showed you just now, those are all done with watercolor. So this is what I do when I'm watercolor painting a book, and it takes a really long time. The video you're seeing here is probably about 1.5 hours to 2 hours of work, and I don't even think she's totally finished at the end of this video. But this is how I did a lot of my books, and as those of you guys who know, I'm sure you've all painted before, you know that when you paint, you're stuck with it, right? You can't go back with an eraser and fix your mistakes. And so as much as I love painting, I know I make a lot of mistakes, and I'm going to want to go and change those. So now I work on this wonderful big computer, which you can kind of see sitting beside me here. So I draw directly on the screen with a stylus, and I'm going to use this in a few minutes to show you guys, or to do a little demonstration and a little draw along with you guys. And so it doesn't make a ton of sense when I say I'm going to be drawing on the computer. Maybe it will in a moment when you watch the video and we do it together. But this is what I mean by drawing on the computer. It doesn't necessarily mean that I go faster. It just means that I can change anything I want as I go along. Because as you can see, I've already changed the angle of her arm. I changed the size of her legs. I wanted that to be a little bit bigger. As long as I build layers in Photoshop over on the side here, you can see them, I can go in and change anything I want. I can try a color, not like it, take the color back out again. I can add some background, don't like the background, take the background back out again. It's a lovely thing, it's a lovely tool for somebody like me who makes a lot of mistakes, because sometimes I don't sit down with a totally clear picture in my head about what it is I'm gonna make. Sometimes I need to just start making things and see what comes out. And sometimes when you work that way, you're gonna make mistakes, and there's gonna be stuff that comes out that you don't really like that much. And so what I love about using the computer is that if I make that mistake and I do wanna change something, I always can, which is fantastic. But like I said, it doesn't necessarily speed things up. In fact, it can make me turn into an uber perfectionist and go back and change everything all the time. But this drawing that you're looking at here, again, is about 2 hours of work. And it's just a doodle that I did one day about, I think I was upset that day. So I just drew a doodle of myself being upset. It's a good way to work through your feelings drawing. I find it very helpful. You're going to see in a second, I put all this red in the background and I don't like it. And I pull it back out again. And that's how I do things in the computer. So many, many years ago, I was working on a story, and I needed to start to work on a story, and I pulled out this drawing that I had done a long time ago, very much like something from my sketchbook, and I looked at it and thought, okay, there's probably a story here. can do something with this. And so I was working on this whole story about this tiger on a bike at night and a little girl and all this stuff. None of it was working. I could not get my story to work. I tried to change the beginning. I tried to change the ending, change the characters, change the setting. I changed everything and nothing was working. And I got so frustrated that I absolutely wanted to quit. I totally cried, totally fell apart. I decided that was probably it. I will never come up with a better story ever. And I absolutely wanted to quit. And then in that moment, I realized that what I was experiencing was what I had seen so many people and kids experience, especially when I do the draw-alongs that I do with kids. Every now and again, there's a number of students that get really frustrated because their drawing doesn't look exactly like the one I'm doing. So I decided that maybe what I was feeling, all those bad feelings that I was having, maybe that was the story. And so that's where the most magnificent thing came from. And I think you guys are familiar with this, but if you're not, I'm going to be reading it to you in just a moment. But before I read it to you, I'm going to show you a little bit about what goes into making this book. So when I write a story, I'm just like the girl in the book. I don't get anything right the first time. I have to try over and over and over again to get it right. So when I write a story, it looks really boring like this. And I've got my words that are going to appear on the page in black. I've got all this blue writing that's just description of what I'm going to draw. And I write the whole thing out, and then I go back and I change it, and I tweak words, and I change the things all over the place. And then I give it to somebody called an editor. Now, an editor to me is like your teacher is to you. So she looks over all of my words and my stories, and she helps me make it better. So she was taking a look at all of this, and she thought, okay, let's change a few different things. She tells me what to add. She tells me where to change things. Sometimes she wants to change big parts of it. So all these little blue squares here, these are all her notes. By the time I finish a book and it's actually published, I've probably written the story anywhere between 12 and 25 times. It's a lot of times, right? And the same goes for my drawings. I don't get any of my drawings right the first time either. So the very first time I ever drew on the computer for a book, actually, was the most magnificent thing. And the very first time I ever drew her, she looked like this. And it was just sort of, I was playing around. I like to know what my characters are going to look like. And I showed this to my editor, because she doesn't just edit my words, she also edits my pictures. And she took a look at this drawing and she said, yeah, she's really cute, but I think she could be just a little bit more modern. So, just like the character in the book, I drew her over and over and over again, trying all different ways to make her better. So this is actually I think I had about 8 to 12 versions of her. They've been lost in time, unfortunately, but I still have these 4. And so we decided we liked the girl with the polka dot coat. Great. So now I have my story. Now I know what my character's going to look like. All I have to do is sit down and draw and color the whole book, and it's like done, right? If only it was that easy. So now I sit down and I draw the whole book, but I only draw it like this. It's something called a rough illustration. So this is just, well, essentially a pencil and an eraser is how I used to do it. Now I do it on the computer, still just a pencil and eraser, really. And I do a sketch version of every single page of the entire book. And then I give all this to my editor, and she looks at all the pages, and she makes sure it makes sense and suggests things I can add and little changes here and there. And then only after we've gone through every single page and we're sure it looks exactly as it's going to look, then I get to start to do the coloring. So partway through the coloring, it looks something like this. This is just flat color and then all the little line work in the background. And then I added all my shading in and I showed it to my editor, and I thought it was done. But guess what? She still wanted to change stuff. She said she thought maybe that this little lady back here, the mom, could be a little bit bigger. And she said, oh, the trees could use some color. And she even suggested I add a parked car over here in the corner. And I did all those things because I want my book to be better. So I'm going to take her suggestions. But we decided we didn't like the parked car afterwards, and we took it back out again. And so this is what it looked like when it was all finished. Now that's how much work goes into one page. And there's 32 pages or more in a picture book. So if you guys can believe it, it actually takes me somewhere between 10 months to a full year to do one picture book. Wild, right? Which is why I always like to suggest that, if you feel like it, please reread them, pour over them. All of us authors and illustrators in the world will be wildly appreciative if you just take some time, reread the books. And speaking of rereading, I know you guys have probably read this book, but I am going to read it to you again right now, if that's okay, because there's a few things I like to point out while I read it that maybe you didn't notice before. First off, I'm going to suggest that you keep a very close eye on this dog right here, because he is going to pee on some stuff, and you're not really going to want to miss that. So the most magnificent thing. This is a regular girl and her best friend in the whole wide world. They do all kinds of things together. They race, they eat, they explore, and they relax. She makes things, and he unmakes things. One day, the girl has a wonderful idea. She is going to make the most magnificent thing. She knows just how it will look. She knows just how it will work. All she has to do is make it. She makes things all the time. Easy peasy. First, she hires an assistant, which is her wee friend right here wearing a bow tie. Next, they gather their supplies. They set up somewhere out of the way and get to work. This is why I wanted to show you guys how it was built beforehand, or how I made a book beforehand, because now when you're looking at these pages, you can remember how much work goes into all these illustrations. Just like the little girl's going to get to work right now, right? The girl tinkers and hammers and measures, while her assistant pounces and growls and chews. When she's finished, she steps back and admires her work. She walks around one side. Her assistant examines the other side. It doesn't look right. Her assistant picks it up and gives it a shake. It doesn't feel right either. They are shocked to discover that the thing isn't magnificent or good. It isn't even kinda sort of okay. It's all wrong. The girl tosses it aside and gives it another go. She smooths and wrenches and fiddles. Her assistant circles and tugs and wags. When she is finished, she stands up and takes a long look at it. Her assistant gives it a nudge with his paw. The thing is still wrong. She decides to try again. The girl saws and glues and adjusts. She stands, examines, and stares. She twists and tweaks and fastens. She fixes and straightens and studies. Oh, that's a lot of stuff. She tries all different ways to make it better. She makes it square. She makes it round. She gives it legs. She adds antenna. She makes it fuzzy. She makes it long, short, rough, smooth, big, and small. One even smells like stinky cheese. What? How did that happen? None of them are magnificent. Her hard work attracts a few admirers, but they don't understand. They can't see the magnificent thing that she has in her mind. She gets mad. The angrier she gets, the faster she works. She smashes pieces into shapes. She jams the parts together. She pummels those little bits in. Her hands feel too big to work, and her brain is too full of all the not right things. If only the thing would just bark! And I have to point out here, the dog's mad too. He's taking it out with his pee. Crunch! The pain starts in her finger. It rushes up to her brain, and she explodes! It is not her finest moment. I'm no good at this, she says. I quit. Her assistant suggests a walk. Because dogs are very, very clever if you just listen to them. Cats too. The walk isn't much help at first. But before long, she starts to feel different. Bit by bit, the mad gets pushed out of her head. I imagine the cookie probably helps here too. Nothing like a nice biscuit. As they stroll along, she comes across the first wrong thing that she made. The bad feelings are about to start all over again. But then she notices something surprising. There are some parts of the wrong things that are actually quite right. The bolts on one, the shape of another, the wheel to seat ratio of the next. There are all sorts of parts that she likes, right? Just like in my sketchbook, there's parts in those drawings that I like. By the time she reaches the end of the trail, she finally knows how to make the thing magnificent. She gets to work. She works carefully and slowly, tinkering and hammering, twisting and fiddling, gluing and painting. Her assistant makes sure there are no distractions, like squirrels, right here. And I do like to point out, just like we are our worst critics, even though the little girl didn't like the things that she made, these people here think they're pretty great. So this man is saying, this is the perfect thing to ward off bears. And this lady right here is saying, this will stop that leak. And the little boy way at the back there, he's picked one up and he's saying, this one's all wet. Any idea why that might have happened? Might have something to do with the dog. The afternoon fades into evening. Finally, she finishes. She alerts her assistant, who is having a lovely little nap there. The pair take a good long look. It leans a little to the left, and it's a bit heavier than expected. The color could use a little bit of work too, but it's just what she wanted. They climb aboard and take it for a spin. They are not disappointed. It really is the most magnificent thing. So that's the end of the story. And hopefully maybe you guys are going to get a chance to see this. I don't really know. It's still doing a bit of a circuit around the world and some festivals and things. So it's I don't really know how it works because I'm not at the animation company. But an animation company here in Canada did make a beautiful short animated film based on my book, and it's narrated by Whoopi Goldberg, who's of course amazing. And this is a still from it. So even though in the book you don't get to see her room and her house and everything like that, you do get to see and meet all these aspects of her life in the animated film. And the book is different from the film. They changed a few things here and there. And so if you do get to see it, I would really love to hear what you guys think about the changes from one to the other. But I think the theme is still there. The idea that you have to try a lot and be patient and just keep on trying until you create the thing that you were meant to make. So I did the book, The Most Magnificent Thing, about the girl who tries and tries and tries. And I don't know if you guys have access to this one, but I thought I would just quickly talk to you guys a little bit about some of the other things that you can run into when you're making something. Because some of us are the person who wants to try over and over again and simply won't quit until it is achieved. That's not all of us. Some of us are a bit afraid to try sometimes. And so I wrote this book, The Thing Lou Couldn't Do, about those of us who look at a challenge in front of us, who look at, remember the big scary blank page and think, I don't want to try because what if I fail? And that's a really scary thing to deal with too. And in this book, the thing that Lou doesn't want to do is climb a big scary tree. All of her friends climb up the tree and they're having a whale of a time up there. And she doesn't know if she can climb a tree because she's never done it before. And instead of trying, she's just gonna find a whole bunch of excuses why she won't do it, right? She steps on a slug in the morning and she has to go to its funeral, and she just found out she's half fish and she has to go live in a bathtub, and there's an asteroid coming right for us. And then finally her tummy is just sore and she doesn't want to try. And so I think we all have felt that way sometimes, especially when there's something big, scary in front of us. And you know what? In the book, when she does try, she fails. She doesn't climb the tree because we don't ever do something perfectly the first time. Sometimes we don't do it at all the first time, but that's a not yet. You might not do it the first time, not yet, but you'll do it maybe the second time, or maybe it's the 8th time, or maybe it's the 28th time. But the idea is that you just have to keep going back and you keep having to try. And then also just one more story I wanted to tell you about. Again, don't know if you guys, if she's there, but some of you guys might be more scientific than artistic. And I hear you kids and I'm with you kids. And so I have this story that came out just last year, and the sequel came out this year, about this little fairy who does not believe in magic. She believes in science. And she's the only one in Pixieville who believes in science. And so life's a little lonely for Esther at first. But just like the girl in The Most Magnificent Thing, and just like Lou in The Thing Lou Couldn't Do, Esther has to try over and over and over again to teach other fairies about science, but also science itself is about trying over and over again, right? That's what the scientific method is. First, you ask a question, you do some research, make a hypothesis, you do experiments. Doing experiments is just trying over and over again, right? And you study the results and you draw a conclusion. Or you could just do magic, your friend says, but we're going to ignore the magic fairies right now. So I certainly have a bit of a theme in my stories about doing the work and trying really hard and following through on your ideas, even if they don't work out the first, third, or 30th time. So that is my presentation for you guys, and I hope that it inspires you guys to go and make some extraordinary creations. I cannot wait to hear about what you guys make, but stay with me because I would love to show you guys how to draw a dog from The Most Magnificent Thing, and maybe that's another way to get your guys' inspiration stirred up so that you guys can go and create like mad. So now I'm going to show you guys how to draw the dog from The Most Magnificent Thing. So let me share my screen, and you guys are going to be looking at my Photoshop page. And so you're going to be seeing me draw on the screen, but you're also going to see me sort of from the angle here. So it's kind of strange to have somebody looking at me over the shoulder while I draw. But it's really easy to draw a dog. And all you have to do is start with a sort of square letter C. So I want to do this step by step, and you guys can copy me if you like, but of course you have it on a video so you can go back and take a look. But you start with a square letter C like this, and then at the top of the C, we're going to have one little line kind of coming out at a bit of an angle. And then another little line kind of comes back in a little, like that. And then it draws downward and connects at the bottom. So the square letter C turns into, honestly, I'm not quite sure what that shape is. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can really see it. So this is the dog's body, and his face is kind of sticking out this way, which means he's kind of angled that way. So I think we should definitely start with maybe his legs. And so we're going to start with his back legs, and that we've got the square letter C. Now we're going to do a round backwards C, or a little half circle, and that's his little back knee that we see there. But because he's angled, we only see a bit of the other back knee. So we're going to have just a little bit of a circle on the other side. And those are his knees, and he's got to have his paws at the bottom of those knees. So we're going to draw just like little pancakes. We're going to give him little pancake paws. And now I'm fortunate enough that I can go in and erase them. You guys are probably using pencils, so maybe you can too. So you can even just erase a little bit of the space there if you want to. His front legs are really easy to draw. They are just, well, they're just kind of like long letter V's. He's got a couple, I've got a little button that can undo things when I want to. I want his leg to be just a little bit fatter there, so I'm going to redo that. So his little legs stick out at the front there, and again, you can erase the bottom of your original shape if you want to show off his little paws there. And now he's kind of a pug-inspired dog, so he's got his little curly Q tail. So his curly Q tail is pretty easy to do. You just do a little spiral, like a little pigtail. But then you start at the end, and then you go back the way you came. And then you've got a little curly Q tail. And he's got a little spot on his back too, so I'm going to add that in there, just like that. And so I like to do the face last because it's always the big reveal. So we're going to give him his ears, and he's got one ear that sticks up, and he's got one ear that kind of flops over. So we're going to start with the sticky uppy ear, and that is a nice, easy, rounded triangle, just like that. And he's also got the little pink triangle that goes inside. And then for the folded ear, I'm gonna teach you guys a little trick. It looks really funny at first, but it's gonna go somewhere. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna draw a piece of pizza floating beside his head. So just a little triangle, just like a pizza slice, right here. And so it's not touching his head, you'll see, just close to his head there. And we're gonna draw a little line at the top that connects to the main shape, and then one from the middle of the pizza slice also connects. And voila, you have a little folded over ear. So this next part also is gonna look weird, bear with me. Dog has his snout, right? The snout part comes out of his mouth, or comes out and has his nose at the end. So we're gonna have his snout, and his snout is a giant circle in the middle of his head. So right now he looks like he's gonna be like a cyclops dog or something, right? But actually, that's just a snout. And it'll look more like a snout if we add his nose in the middle. Just like that. I make my nose a little bit rectangular. It looks kind of like home base in baseball or something. Not that I'm a sports person, but. So for his eyes, we are going to put little circles on either side of his snout, just like that. And now he kind of looks like a zombie dog. So we're gonna put some dots inside of his eyes. You can have him looking any which way you like. I'm gonna have him facing off that way. And he's also got a spot around one eye, right here, just the one eye. So I add an extra circle around the one eyeball there. Oh, and he's holding his mouth, right? So we're gonna have a little line that comes down from his nose, and then a nice big smile, because he's a very happy dog. And he is such a happy dog, he's probably got his tongue sticking out, just like that. And now he's kind of like me, he always has a couple hairs going the wrong direction, so we're gonna add a couple of those at the top of his head there. And we're going to add, well, really, you guys can add whatever you want now. This tends to be how I draw my dog. And I like to add a little flower there. Although, you know, he's a dog, so if he's outside and there's a flower there, there's a pretty good chance he's probably peed on that flower. So we'll add a little pee puddle in there. But that is how you draw a dog. So you guys, of course, can do whatever you like with him now. If you want to add more to him, if you want him to be, I don't know, maybe you want him to have a hat on, or maybe you guys would like him to, sorry about that, I hit the wrong button. Maybe you guys would like to have him be, I don't know, wearing a cool outfit, or maybe you want him to have a friend or a food dish nearby. Really, he's all yours now, and you can color him if you want to, like I'm going to do right now. And again, these are the colors that I used in the book, but he's yours. You guys can add whatever colors you want to him. I love to see what kids can create with my drawings, and where you start and where you guys can take them. Now again, you guys are getting to see that I get to go in and fix anywhere that comes out of the lines, which is kind of nice. It means I can be kind of a sloppy colorer, which again, not something you get to do if you are using crayons, right? Or pencil crayons or anything like that. So in my world, he has darker ears. He's got a dark spot around his eyes. He's got dark on his snout. Maybe it's not that exciting to watch me color this, but it's kind of satisfying to see them all finished. And it really doesn't take very long. Thank you, computers. We can add a little dark color to his nose. Maybe a little bit of pink to his ears and his tongue. You might notice that my little dog just walked in the room. His name's Gordon. That is Gordon the dog. And then we're going to put a little pink flower here. And a little bit of green. And of course, can't forget the all-important pea puddle. So that is how you draw dog. So I hope you guys are very happy with what you have drawn, and I hope if you have a chance, you could maybe send me some pictures of what you guys have created, because I would love to see. So happy creating, happy building, and I hope you all stay well and feel very inspired. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.